For years now, the world of sociology, psychology, and anthropology, to a certain degree, have been exploring the question of how far does the cult of Trump go when it comes to the nature of the individuals that make it up. We know that this is a group seemingly very willing to be grifted and scammed and cheated by their great leader. And that is very much in line with many cults and many cult leaders. But one of the areas that has been explored a little bit less until now is the question of, do Trump cultists choose Trump over their own family and friends? This is something that if you've studied cults, if you read about Jim Jones or David Koresh or Charles Manson and of course others, you come to a point where you realize that the cultists eventually choose the cult leader over their family and over their friends. And we have a fascinating, if not extraordinarily distressing and depressing new poll about Trump supporters. And indeed, Trump voters say that they trust Trump more than their own family and their own friends. Newsweek sums up the CBS News YouGov poll out just 2 days ago, saying that former President Donald Trump supporters say they hold him as a source of true information over their family, friends, and religious leaders. Take a look at some of this data. Top answers among Trump voters. Who do you feel what they tell you is true? 71% of Trump voters say we feel what Trump tells us is true, compared to only 63% of Trump voters who say what my friends and family tell me is true. 56% believe conservative media figures are telling them the truth. And interestingly, only 42% of Trump voters believe that it is religious leaders that are telling them the truth. This snapshot, and of course, every poll is only a snapshot. You can ask every question different ways and you will get different answers. We know all of this. But this snapshot is important insight into why Donald Trump will almost certainly win the 2024 Republican primary nomination, despite the fact that he's bailing on debates, despite the fact that he has been indicted 4 times and at least plausibly is going to be convicted of criminality that he participated in while president and in the aftermath of being president of the United States. This is a cult, and it really needs to be studied as such. And, you know, we've interviewed cult experts on the program a number of times, cult experts that come from the field of psychology or sociology or researchers or whatever the case may be. And one of the regular reactions that I get from Trump supporters after we do these interviews is they say, David, I'm not in a cult. I'm not in a cult, and it's wrong for this individual to say that I am. Now, I don't want to get into one of these kind of vicious cycles where if you're not in a cult, you might deny being in a cult. But if you are in a cult, you often also deny being in a cult. That's one of the primary features of being in a cult, which is you've been convinced that it's not actually a cult. So we can't really take as a super important data point that many Trump followers write to me and say, I'm not in a cult. It's just that, you know, Joe Biden's a criminal and he's been replaced by a lookalike, all this different stuff. One of the really important reactions from Trump followers is beyond denying that they are in a cult to try to justify why the cult leader is so great. And that is a really common thing. Again, if you've read about any of the major cult leaders prominently in the 20th century, David Koresh, Charles Manson, and Jim Jones, this is very common. That often it's I'm not in a cult or it's not a cult quickly replaced with talking about how great the cult leader is, almost saying it makes sense that I'm so devoted in this way. If we want to understand the polling data, if we want to understand how has Trump gone from 51 to 57 since the indictment started, it doesn't make any sense. You have to understand the cultish reaction from followers to what is going on. And this poll explains it extraordinarily clearly.